Smeared faces, Lord, they hate to hear your message. Though I'm geared with your protection, your armor that I've been blessed with, no stressing. When I'm trying to teach them all your lessons, they looking at me crazy like I got a weird perspective. Smeared faces, Lord, they hate to hear your message. Though I'm geared with your protection, your armor that I've been blessed with, no stressing. When I'm trying to teach them all your lessons, they looking at me crazy like I got a weird perspective.
Hey, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, cat, dogs, squirrels, raccoons, and everybody in between. This is the Weird Perspective Podcast. My name is Darry, here with my amazing co-host, Mr. Raymond Woods in the flesh. Yeah.
Pleasure. Loving the vibe, loving the energy. This is wonderful. So excited.
Yeah, I'm super excited about today's episode.
True.
As you probably know, because we've been talking about it. But man, we're gonna have some fun. This is gonna be a really, really fun episode for those of y'all who are listening. We're gonna be talking about some things, some things that all of us have either heard or talked about. It's a very popular thing, but we'll get into that in a second. I do want to take a moment to give our condolences and just send thoughts, prayers, our love to to the victims and to the families of those involved in the Nashville school shooting. If you haven't heard, there was an elementary school that was shot up. I believe 3 people passed away and 12 were injured. Don't quote me on those numbers, but I believe it was somewhere around there. This happened by a 28-year-old woman. Like a trans woman, I believe it was. And she shot up her old elementary school. They originally thought it was a student because she looks very, very small. If you haven't seen the video, she looks like she's a student, like she's 12, 13 years old. And she came, shot up the school, and was dealing with whatever she was dealing with. And so our thoughts and prayers go out to the families, the victims of that terrible thing that happened out there in Nashville.
No doubt. And I just think, I know like one more bit of discourse isn't really needed, but just I'm glad that I was taught that my first instinct should be to pray. And I think I'm not saying I have all the answers, but like I think if a lot more of our first instincts would be to pray, yeah, we need to have tough conversations about like safety in schools, gun control, and all that stuff. But you always want to undergird that, I think, as believers with prayer. So please be praying for the situation, and there is strength there. So
yeah. Man, I think we probably could talk about this, maybe do an episode on this in the future about the whole conversation behind gun control. You know,
true.
I think we have enough laws. I think we have safety things in place. We probably can tidy up some of those things, but I think we have a great deal of things that people have to go through in order to buy a gun. And so I don't think that it's a thing of guns, right? I honestly believe as a Christian, like it's a sin issue. It's a sin issue. It's people who are battling and dealing with sins that go out and do these crazy, very harmful, destructive acts against other people, against innocent children. It's not a gun issue, right? It's a sin issue. And if we're going to provide resources to anything, it should be to get people the mental help and the spiritual counseling that they need as an individual. Other than that, we're going to continue to see these things. These things are going to continue to happen. There is not like, hey, let's get rid of guns and then the violence will stop. Maybe mass shootings will stop because we won't have any more guns, but people are still going to find ways to hurt people. Wars and all those things, murders was happening before there were even weapons. Go all the way back to Cain and Abel. He killed his brother with a stone. And so we won't have people running up on you with guns, but you'll have them running up on you with a bat or with a knife. And are we just going to continue to ban everything, or are we going to get to the root of what it is, which is sin
That's
and
good.
a lot of mental issues, a lot of spiritual issues that's going on. And so we won't see these things stop, not on this side of eternity, but definitely when Jesus comes back, he's going to destroy this earth and renew it and refine it with fire. And then we'll be able to live with him in peace, not having to deal with sin or even anybody wanting to commit sins for
Amen.
eternity. And that's what I look forward to, man. That's what I look forward to. That's how I found my peace.
Amen. Agreed.
Amen. Amen.
I like that, man.
And so Raymond knows this.
Awkward segue. But go ahead.
Awkward segue. We're gonna just switch it over real quick because man, we got some stuff we want to get into. But some of y'all probably looking like, what's this green thing around my neck? Because y'all can't see the bottom of it. But I am wearing this with pride.
You wearing that because you robbed a leprechaun, man. Like be honest, homie.
I'm wearing this with joy. I'm wearing this saying that I truly earned this. This is a medal. I've officially ran my first 8K run. This is called the Shamrock Shuffle. It's a Chicago short marathon that they do every year. I never thought about doing it up until this year. I was challenged to do this, and so I am wearing this medal. I'm going to continue to wear it. Whenever we talk about running or health and fitness, I can look at this medal and say, I earned this. An 8K for the first time. I'm super excited.
Now, if we were to pan down right now to Darry's legs and feet, you would see his feet are in some Epsom salt right now. And, you know, he got like they all he got on multiple patches of icy hot, but you know we're not gonna pan down, and we gonna keep the camera up here so he looks triumphant, you know, and all that stuff.
Yeah, no, it was rough, but it was good though. The thing that happened for me was the shin splints. So I did have about like 2.5 miles in, 3 miles in, I had some terrible shin splints, man. And so if it wasn't for the people around me, man, it was this elderly lady running and she was just trucking along. And I was like, man, I can't be out here and let her just pass me up like that. And, you know, I gotta finish this, right? If you don't know what an 8K is, it's about 5 miles. A little bit like 5.1, 5.2 miles, something like that. And so I was like, I gotta run this and I gotta finish and finish strong. And so, man, I pushed through. I fed off the energy of the people around me, and also I had a fire playlist that had me amped, man. I caught myself a couple times, like as I was running, I'm getting into it. I was dancing and everything like that.
I saw a video of Darry crossing the finish line. He actually crip walked across.
He said I crip walk, man. I was out there looking what Snoop Dogg at. But no, it was.
Wait, you said fire playlist. You gotta break down because this actually leads into our topic. But really quickly, give me 5 of the fire songs from your playlist, and then we're gonna get into the main topic.
So the very first song, right? Well, my favorite song that was on the playlist right now. It's by an artist named KB, and he has a new song out called Easy. And that just, when you hear it, from the time it come on until the end of it, just is my favorite song out right now. So whenever I need a pick-me-up, man, we going to the gym, working out, whatever it is, you throw that on, I'm all in. It is definitely a high-energy song. I had Lecrae playing, Spread the Ops Out. That was on the playlist. You know what? Let me just pull this up. Let me pull this up, man, because let me see. I give you a couple, whatever the first 5 songs I see on this list, I'll tell you. So we had Easy by KB, another KB track called 10K, sorry. Like I said, Lecrae, Spread the Ops Out. I had Andy Mineo and Lecrae coming in hot. I had Thizzle, Let's Get To It. I got about 40, 42 tracks up on this playlist. So I was in my zone, man. I was in my zone. And so I was able to finish, and it was a good time.
Now I noticed, and audience, I don't know if you noticed this too, but all of those artists were Christian hip hop artists or artists who make who specialize primarily in Christian music or Christian hip hop.
Yes.
Was that a purposeful choice?
Yeah, it was a purposeful choice. I too, and we're gonna get into it in a minute, don't really listen to any, I guess, secular artists is what we'll call them. I don't really listen to any secular artists today. I might like check for some, you know what I'm saying? I might, some of my old school favorites, I might like, let me see if they growing and maturing, what they talking about these days. I might get a album a listen. But if it's too much, I turn it off and I don't even bother with it. But I do see what people be talking about, man. I kind of stay in tune with the culture and what's going on. But just in my day-to-day, like every day listening, nah, I don't really have any secular artists in any playlists of mine. I got some R&B artists. Now that's a whole nother thing we can talk about.
That's a whole nother conversation.
But I do have some secular artists. I do have an R&B playlist with some Usher, with some with some Anthony Hamilton, with some Music Soul Child, like real love songs.
I'd be out on the track just laid out, like, just with my hands behind my head, just looking up, like chilling. I wouldn't be running no marathon, man, if I had Music Soul Child.
No, not in my running, but just like if I'm in the car with my wife, it's date night. We listen to R&B. And so even, late night, when you're trying to set the mood. So ain't nothing wrong with love as long as you married.
There you go. Thank you.
Y'all get my drift, right? Y'all get my drift. You know what I'm saying?
Christian podcast. We gotta keep it Christian.
This is a Christian podcast. But anyway, yeah, so I do listen to secular artists like on the R&B side. It's like clean love songs though. Not none of that like what's that? I ain't even gonna say the name of it because I don't know if we got any kids listen to it. But
it's the bump and grind stuff, basically.
Yeah, it's an artist. It's a pretty popular song now, but he talk about when we do some stuff. And I only playing that, right? I got love songs about how a man loves his wife or how a loving relationship, what it looks like. So it's very, very, I'm very intentional about music that I listen to, even R&B. So yeah.
Now to that point, because you mentioned Christian hip hop a second ago, and I'd actually like to talk about that a little bit, like, because I have feelings about Christian hip hop. As a Christian, I seek to honor God in what I listen to, and I like a lot of different genres of music. I like jazz, I like classical. I can listen to R&B. I grew up on Motown. But, I do have, I grew up with brothers who like hip hop, and I do believe, I think it's a wonderful art form. But, as a Christian, I have kind of felt that struggle to, kind of monitor a lot of what I listen to. And I think a lot of Christians sometimes feel that struggle because so much of Christian hip hop they find to be corny or whack. So I'd actually like to talk about that. I mean, that's kind of the topic of this episode is why do so many Christians kind of find it hard to rock with Christian hip hop? Like, why does it seem to be lacking? Why does it seem to be corny? Or is that fair? Is there actually good Christian hip hop and we're not giving it a chance?
Yeah. Ray is being really polite, and I respect him for being really polite.
Thank you.
Why is Christian hip hop, right? We're talking about hip hop, so bad, right?
Yeah.
And so there is an abundance of artists that come out, and the music, it sounds dated, it sounds really cheesy. The lyrics ain't hitting on nothing, or they using like one of the worst things. I think we should retire this, and if anybody hears this in the song, the Bible 66 clips, or referencing the Bible as a gun, like so played out. It's been going on for a long time. And so we're gonna talk about that today. We're gonna talk about why is Christian hip hop so bad, and has it ever been good? Will it continue to get better? Will it continue to evolve? What are like some of the top Christian artists saying? How are they impacting CHH and even the secular music world as well? So we're going to talk about it today. We're just going to get into it today. And so, Ray, what is your history with Christian hip hop? Did you grow up listening to it? Did you? I know you say you like jazz and stuff like that, but was Christian hip hop being played in your household?
Now, I mean that's interesting because the way I grew up, like I think a lot of kids when they first encounter music, it comes from a very like open place. You know, most kids, at least in the U.S., they grow up like singing Disney tunes and singing nursery rhymes and stuff like that. But so I grew up singing a lot of that. But I actually really discovered hip hop when a lot of white America did, because I grew up in what is known as the black suburbs. Now, I mean, America is very big, it's very diverse, and there's a lot of different like I hate to say the word class, but there's a lot of different like levels of society. But I grew up in what I would define as the black suburbs, where you had a bunch of black people that lived in the hood, they got some money, and they was like, yo, let's go to the suburbs. It looks nicer out there. And I'm not trying to generalize, but my pop was just like, yo, I want my family to have more opportunities. So
That's some truth to
in
it.
the black, some truth. I'm, we'll talk about this at a later date, but I'm about to start a family myself, so I can feel that. So, but more on that later. But we moved to the black suburbs, and a lot of the culture I was exposed to and was growing up in was TRL. It was Backstreet Boys and NSYNC. It was Christina and Britney, and a lot of what was cool was that because when I was growing up in the '90s, the two big things was BET and MTV. Hip hop and pop. The '80s were kind of over. And like music was it was getting a lot more flashy, a lot more commercial. Grunge was over. I mean, I'm kind of like giving you a capsule version of music history. I'm kind of a music nerd, so I love a lot of this stuff. But I grew up just watching TRL. That was like the cool thing to do. My older brothers were watching BET. My older brothers were the hip hop heads, Quincy and Jermaine. So they grew up, on Tribe and on Diggable Planets and on, De La Soul. Shout out to De La Soul, who finally got their album put on streaming platforms and are getting paid. And rest in peace, to the member who passed away. But
Yeah,
my brothers were the hip hop heads. So as I grew, and as soon as hip hop started hitting white America, that's when I was actually exposed to it. I remember when Big Pimpin' first dropped, and it wasn't just on BET, but it was on TRL. I remember when Jay-Z actually was shaking hands with Carson Daly and sitting next to the little white girls in the Times Square studio and stuff like that. And it was just the cool thing to do. I remember when Eminem, first dropped and had America shook. I remember when 50 Cent first dropped in the club, and hip hop was. I remember the transition of Snoop being like scary to Snoop like kicking it with Martha Stewart and like singing at the Super Bowl and stuff like that. So in the course of time, I became a fan, but I didn't gravitate to hip hop right away, because around the time I got into my teen years, that's when I really started making my first steps in my walk with Jesus. So I kind of started to shun a lot of like music, be it like secular, be it hip hop, be it pop, be it rock, because I tried fitting in and it just kind of left me like a little bit empty. So that's really when I discovered jazz, because I was like, God, I don't want to forsake music altogether, but I just need something that kind of gives me more of a peaceful mind state. I can't have nothing too crazy. I can't have nothing too out there. It just messes with it just gives me an uneasy feeling in my spirit. And that's when I found jazz, because, I can sit and I can put on a jazz record and I could just kind of vibe out on it. And, that went on for a little bit, but, eventually I did find my way into hip hop. So many interesting things were happening in the culture. Hip hop, as I don't know if you know this, but it actually overtook rock and roll a couple of years ago as the dominant art form.
Yep.
So I mean, that's amazing to me. This black art form, this thing that rolls out of black culture, and you look at like just how it like just took America by storm.
Yeah.
And at like every level of society, hip hop kind of infiltrated, and just now it's setting the culture. And so, but I couldn't really approach it the way I had to find my way in. So, I went to my brothers and I was like, yo, I'm a jazz fan, and I like a lot of what I've been hearing. Can you recommend like some jazzy style like hip hop artists? So that was a way I got in. They
Mm.
recommended De La Soul and Tribe, and I was a huge Kanye fan. I still am to a certain extent. I like artists like Common, and so I found my niche in hip hop, and that was as a conscious hip hop fan. I guess more New York style. Really thoughtful lyrics, really jazzy beats, and that's kind of where I found my foothold. And when I started to grow more in my faith in terms of what I let myself listen to, I mean, I guess you can say all of Christian hip hop is conscious hip hop, but you have more. You have Christian hip hop that's more low key and lo-fi, then more trap style and more like rowdy.
Yeah.
So I don't like Christian turn up music. I like Christian music you can sit back and vibe to, and just really enjoy the word really enjoy the word play, and really dig that. So that's kind of where I'm at with hip hop in general. I'm a conscious hip hop fan. My love of jazz really informs what I listen to, and ultimately my love of Jesus informs everything I allow myself to consume as I grow more in love with Him. So there you go.
That's dope. That's dope, man. I didn't know that about your with music, so I learned a little bit something new about Ray every time we do the show.
Thank you.
For me, man, just kicking it off to my early childhood years, my mom wasn't having it. I wasn't allowed to listen to hip hop. My sister was. For some odd reason, my mom thought because she was 6 years older than me that it was okay for her to be able to listen to music, and that for some reason it wouldn't affect her, or because she was already used to it, that it was okay. And so because I was the baby boy, she was like, "No, absolutely not. You're not listening to any of that." And so I didn't get it. I didn't listen to hip hop at the house. I heard some of it because of my sister. My sister would watch BT. She would watch The Box. She would record the videos. So we had like VHS tapes. Some of y'all like VHS. What's that? VHS
Make me feel old.
tapes. Yeah, and the VCR. My sister would record them, and so late night or when my mom wasn't there or whatever, like she would put them in the VCR and play she was into Brandy, Monica, SWV, all the stuff.
Wait, I was waiting for you to say SWV. I was like, you mentioned Brandy and Monica, you got to mention Week and
Yeah. So all those groups and music I heard because of my sister, and then on the other flip side of that, I grew up in a single parent home, so I was raised by my mom, but my dad would get me on the weekend sometimes. And so when my dad picked me up, this is now DMX, Biggie, Pac, Big Pun, and whoever else was popping at that time. For you guys to paint a picture for you guys, I was born in '88. And so you just think about all the artists that was popping in the early '90s to mid '90s. Those is the ones that I would hear when I was with my dad, and I heard all explicit stuff. It wasn't clean; he didn't care. So that was the stuff I was exposed to on the weekend. So just to paint a picture to give y'all some perspective of how I grew up, I had gospel, some clean like hip hop and R&B at the crib with my mom, but with my dad it was straight gangster rap, explicit all day. And then my cousins on my dad's side, they would just BT, The Box all day. It was just music playing all day. One of the TVs always had BT on. And so as I grew up, the more time I spent over there, I started to be exposed to like The Basement with Big Tigger, See This World, 106 in Park. All those shows I got to watch when I was with my dad, but we couldn't play that stuff in the crib unless you had some headphones on or my mom wasn't at the crib. So that was like my early childhood years. Now, my mom got remarried, and my stepdad, he was like, "Hey, you need to let a boy be a boy." And because he listened to hip hop, my mom started to let me listen to hip hop. And so this is like seventh, eighth grade up into the high school years. I was allowed to listen to hip hop. So this is now late 90s, early 2000s. So you got Lil Wayne and you got, Cash Money and pretty much everybody. And I went from not listening to music at all to listening to it all the time as much as I can. And even to the point where I started, I was the bootleg man in high school. So you needed a playlist, you needed an album, you came and you hollered at your boy, and I would get you right. I did playlists for basketball team, football team, stuff like that. I even had some teachers that was like, hey, I need a playlist, blah blah blah. This is when downloading music was popping off. So LimeWire, Kazaa, all them like.
You were LimeWire?
I was LimeWire.
I was Kazaa. Dear Lord, that stuff was trash, man. Like it was almost as if like God was like, why don't y'all just pay, y'all can see this is trash. Just pay $1 for the song. You messed your whole computer up for like 1.50 cents.
I had so many viruses on my computer that my mom had to get fixed. But I mean, for me, it was really good. But I was just exposed to a ton of music, and so Lil Jon, Eastside Boys, T.I., all them dudes, Jeezy was taking off, and so those dudes' music started to really shape my life and who I was becoming as a young man. And so growing up, T.I., so it was probably like Tupac. I used to love some DMX because it was like deep, and I used to love Nas. T.I. came out, and it was just like, for some reason, I was all in on T.I. This little short dude, I'm short, so we was relatable in that way. And I mean, I took a liking to him. And so I was just T.I. crazy. All the T.I. was just getting played. And so I had different moods of music that I would listen to. 1 minute, while I'm riding around in the car, it's heavy bass, so all you hearing is trap music, or you hearing Twista and things with heavy bass. And then sometimes when I'm mellow, I'm low key, I'm solo, and you might hear me playing like some Nas, some stuff that makes me think, or DMX getting me emotional, stuff like that. When I'm riding through certain neighborhoods, I got some Twista Blast and some Do or Die. So, man, I listen to everything, and I had different. I didn't have a particular one that I liked the most. It was just whatever mood I was in, and whoever I felt can relate to me at that time, that was who was getting played. And so somewhat still like that today. But now as a Christian, I really don't listen to secular music, right? I still check for it, to know what's going on in the culture, to, I'm checking to see, man, what's going on with such and such, what's going on with some of my old favorite artists from back in the day, and listening to see, are these dudes growing? Is there anything changed? Are they talking about something positive? And also the fact that I work with high schoolers, I want to know like what they listening to, what got their ear. And so, I always kind of just keep my ear to the streets in that way, so that I can be able to talk to kids and relate to them and what's going on in their world and who they rocking with. But I don't really listen to, some really secular artists. There's some old school tracks that I listen to. Like, you might catch me bumping like some Will Smith Summertime on one of them real smooth, chill summer days where the windows down, and you can catch me on Lakeshore Drive just riding. You know what I'm saying?
I love. Wait, real quick. Summertime. If somebody were to say to me, give me a perfect hip hop song or a song that explains hip hop and everything it is, I would give them Summertime.
Wow. Why is that?
I mean, from the top to the bottom, you think about everything hip hop is. I'll start with the sample. That's one of the illest sample flips. Summer Madness, right, by Kool and the Gang. Like
drums, please.
even the video was nice, and Jazzy Jeff doesn't get enough credit. The sample flip is nice. The lyricism is, I don't care if it's Will, because he gets too much hate. Yeah, we know he slapped somebody, but the lyricism from Mr. Smith from the Fresh Prince is I put it up against any bars that's ever been spit. Oh, you say, well, you put it up against Jay-Z, you put it up against this? Yes, because it's not about it's the dexterity, it's the chillness, it's the poetry of it, it's the content. Everything is bananas on that song. But that I just had to jump in. Thank you for highlighting that. That means you got good taste. So you get it.
I like Will, and I don't listen to like every last one of his albums, but there are certain songs that I like, and I like that the fact that when he raps it rhymes, it sounds good, right? He can flow, but also like it's clean, and I love when people tell stories. My biggest issue with today's music is that a lot of times they don't tell stories. They're just saying a whole bunch of metaphors and punchlines, or a lot of times just stuff. They're all over the place. It's like, what is this song about? And it's just the beat carries the song. If the beat is hard, you can easily go on there, say some stuff. You got mumble rappers. You like, what are they saying? What are they talking about? And so I love like DMX, for example, right? And Slippin'. He got a song called Slippin'. And man, even as a Christian, I can listen to that song now and be like, dang, like, because it talks about a song of him slipping, and he's talking about the stuff that he's dealing with and how he's falling off and everything that's going on in his life. And I love that. I love when people can be a poet. Tupac, number one, like a really good storyteller. Like you listen to Brenda's Got a Baby and you feel like, I know Brenda, bruh. Like, dang. You know what I'm saying? Like, Biggie, one of the greatest storytellers in his rhymes, you know what I'm saying? From party songs to even just like, real deep songs that make you think whatever it is. But I love storytelling. And so if I can listen to a song and I can just close my eyes and visualize everything they're saying, that's great. But I love to turn up too. I love the songs where you just like, like I said before, man, I listened to Lil Jon Eastside Boys, and it was the King of Crunk, and I ain't care what they was talking about, you know what I'm saying? And you just throw it on and we up in here, you know what I'm saying? Songs make you want to fight or whatever it is. So I kind of grew up, man, in the just mixed of music. Even not to take up so much time on this, but to go back, I even used to listen to a little bit of like rock and roll because I grew up in a somewhat mixed community. It was predominantly like Hispanics with some blacks in there, with some whites sprinkled in there. So my friends at a young age, it was pretty diverse. And so, you got man, what's the group with Kurt Cobain? What's his group called?
Nirvana.
So I was into that for like a little bit. Like, you catch me in my room and it's like I'm playing Madden, and I'm just, or at the time it was EA, it was Live was a basketball game, not 2K, and you can catch me listening to some of them as I'm playing the video game. So and it was whatever mood I was in, man. I just been exposed to a lot of different things as far as music, but what we talking about today is hip hop, so we're gonna keep it to hip hop. But that's my history with hip hop, man. Grew up listening to everything,
So now, where are we at? So our personal history with hip hop, that brings us to Christian hip hop, because like we kind of gave our history and then talked about how our faith started to influence what we listen to. Yeah. So I guess I'll throw it to you first, because I have my whole filibuster, and Darius heard me at work kind of pontificate a lot on my feelings on Christian rap. But I want to let's start off on maybe a slightly more positive note. And let me ask Mr. Cooks, how do you feel about Christian hip hop in general?
Present day, as of right now, I think Christian hip hop is in a really good space. I think there's enough diversity. Where people can put out really good music, and they can do that independently. Praise the Lord for high quality, inexpensive equipment, which is we're using here on this podcast. I think for a long time, in order to make really good sounding equipment, it was only the industry, right? The music companies, right? The record labels, they had all the good equipment. So it was really hard to get some really good sounding, pleasing to the ear music because people were making it in their basement. And if it's not mixed down right, it's like like. And then you listen to this dude who made the song in the basement. It might sound really good, as far as what he's talking about, the lyrics, the beat is nice, but it's not mixed right. So it's like And then you listen to something that was made in the studio. You only want to listen to the stuff with the lower quality. So you were in this like uphill battle, and I think as Christians, because nobody was really throwing money to Christian artists at the time, I think a lot of them had to deal with that, where they just had to go into the studio and do the best that they possibly can with the stuff that they had, but it wasn't up to par. You know what I'm saying? And when we talk about production. Production is really big when you're talking about music, right? Like the beat, it needs to be, especially when the standard, the industry has already put the standard up here, and they got high end producers, Timbaland, Pharrell, Kanye, Just Blaze, like they got top notch producers, and the Christian artists like, man, we can't afford them, man. We got Deacon such and such, bro, making the beats, man, in the back of the church, bro. You know, he go give it to me for free because he's saying this for the Lord, do your thing. And it's just not to the same quality. And so I think for a long time, Christian hip hop has been on this upward battle as far as trying to have really good production, really good beats. I think they always were talented enough to rap. But it's like, what are you rapping to? What are you rapping over? And how's it coming all together? And so when I first was exposed to Christian hip hop is when I first got saved. This was in 2011. And I had such a deep rooted connection with hip hop. Like I said, it literally shaped my life. When I got saved, God, he took all that from me. I used to make music with my cousins. We used to do it for fun, but it was like a hobby. And so I had like, you know, the little $200 little mixer joint from M Audio, and I had the little mic, the little portable mic you plug into the computer. This is when all that stuff started to really take off, when people can really go to like a Guitar Center. If you're from Chicago, you know what a Guitar Center is. You can go there and you can buy some stuff and, you know, buy some of these foam mats that you see behind me, put them in your closet and set your little mic up and do your thing, right? This is when that equipment is now made inexpensive and is made to the public, and now we can do stuff on our own. And then you had like SoundCloud, and it was another website, man, that you can go and buy beats from.
Audacity?
That was one, but it was another one. I can't think of it. It'll come to me. But that is the same concepts, but people would make beats and put them on there, and then people can buy them or download it for free and use it. And they had the backdrop. So you couldn't steal it. You had to buy the official licensed version to get the dude's drop out of the background. So it'd be like one of the popular guys was Jolly Juniano. He actually did some songs with like Andy Mineo and stuff like that. And so it'd be like in the background, it'd be like jollyjuniano.com. And so you can't steal this beat because you're going to literally have that like every 30 seconds dropping in the back of the beat as you rapping. So, you had stuff like that, but I think that was the 2010, 2011, 2012 was the start of like, we had access to all these things as for Christians. And so I was exposed to 116. Well, back to the story, God stripped music from me. So I had a lot of deep relationships that weren't healthy for me. And it was all connected through music. One of my best friends was a DJ. I had family members that were rappers and singers, and I was exposed to a lot of things. I was around a lot of things that I shouldn't have been around. And if God was going to be able to use me, I needed to remove myself from those individuals. So when God removed music from me, man, I had about 2 or 3 of the big CD books.
Oh, yeah.
Man, I threw all them CDs away. Just threw them in the trash, threw them in the dumpster. And, man, I didn't really get into any music for about a year and a half, 2 years, where I didn't do any music. I didn't, like, mess around with no beats or anything. And then I didn't really listen to music. And then when I finally did start to be like, okay, listening to music was cool. It was 116. That was the first group, hip hop group. 116 consists of, at that time, it was Lecrae, Trip Lee, Tadashi, Flame, Sho Baraka. Those were the guys that were kind of like jumping onto the scene. They were like the new Cross Movement. If you don't know the history of Cross Movement was a group. It consists of this guy named Ambassador and some other guys. I didn't really listen to Cross Movement like that, but I did listen to Ambassador. And from them, you had 116 and Reach Records, which Lecrae is a founder of, and he's one of the leaders in that group. And so those were the music that I was exposed to. Now, when I started listening to them, I was like, yo, these beats ain't hitting on nothing. They were dope rappers. The music, what they were talking about, their content, the lyrics was good, right? Theological rap, some of them could say. Like, they were talking about how God has changed them, and it was like pretty much like sermons on these records. But the beats wasn't hitting on nothing, which made it really hard for me to like really zone out to like an album.
Yeah.
And then, but you also so fast forward, they started to evolve. They started to get better production. They still were dope rappers, kept moving, but then I started to be exposed to more people. Thizzle was one of them. Jason was one of them. So I'm like, oh, okay. This Christian CHH world is much bigger than I knew about. Like, it's a ton of Christian hip hop artists, and so I started to listen to them, and they all had their different styles. Some dudes had a little bit more street. They sounded a little bit more street because they come from that background. And so it was good. I started to, kind of be able to fill them out and zone out to it. And so fast forward to now, I think, as I said before, I think Christian hip hop is in a good space because it's a ton of different artists be able to be themselves, able to put out music, and some of it is bad, but a lot of it is good. A lot of the OGs who I used to listen to, Lecrae and all them, like, they're still super relevant. Lecrae is probably the top in CHH as far as, I bet he's been around for like 20 something years. Just put out Church Clothes 4. Church Clothes 4 sounds, when you line it up with some of the secular artists' albums, it's just as good, if not better. And he can really rap. So I'm happy where CHH is as of right now. I don't really have an issue with it. You find artists that you like, and then you listen to them and you rock with them. And so that's where I'm at with CHH. I think it's in a good place. I think it's going to continue to get better.
I think, that's good. I would agree that CHH is in a good place. I don't think it's in as good of a place as it could be. I think like if you have to, the comparisons are less dire. Where like in the early days of CHH and even into the early aughts, you could still be like, yo, for every one Christian hip hop album you get that's fire, you got like 20 secular albums that just have better production, better wordplay, better rapping and whatnot. I think maybe now it's like for every 3, or let me be generous, for every 20 secular worldly hip hop albums that are fire, you got like 5 to 6 Christian albums that legitimately could be like, yo, this is good production, this is good wordplay. So I think it's getting there. I know me, as far as my attitude towards Christian hip hop, it was really sour at first, and it was based totally and completely off of the product. I can't argue with the message. Which would be hard because I was like, man, it's like the final product is so whack, but it's like I feel bad hating on it because the message is one I agree with. I'm not gonna knock anybody sharing the gospel, but I'm like, why you gotta to use an old adage from the Cosby Show? Why you gotta give me this filet mignon on the garbage can lid? It's like how you serve something, I think does to a certain extent matter. And I've recently started coming around more to it. I would say specifically in the past 2 years or maybe since COVID, just like God has been doing a lot of work in my life, and just a lot of foundations like have gotten like torn up, and just I guess like just about a lot of stuff I exposed myself to, so and I could say a lot of the I was prejudiced towards a lot of CHAs. Like I wouldn't want to give it a chance, even if it sounded halfway decent.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if you dig deep enough into any musical art form, you'll find stuff that you rock with. I wasn't willing to give Christian hip hop a chance, but I started doing a little bit of digging, and I have found good artists. I mean, we're gonna get into the artists as we end the episode, but I still think even with the digging I've done, you still find better production in the world. That said, Christian hip hop is getting to a better place. It's in a much better place than it was like when it first started out. You're getting artists who are willing to take bigger chances, who don't care about what people think, and who they're unapologetic with their faith and repping Jesus. But inside of that, they're unapologetic with their expression and what they talk about. They'll touch on sex. They'll touch on like finance. They'll touch on money. They'll touch on the past. They'll touch on racism. They'll touch on all of that, but and they're freer with it. They're not worried so much about, if I offend Christians, but am I touching the world? Are they hearing like my heart? Are they hearing what I'm saying? So it's a must. And the last thing I say is that especially as a lo-fi sort of hip hop head, I like more jazzy stuff, more conscious stuff. I can turn up, I would say I'm 90% conscious, 10% turn up. And now, but with Christian rap, it's like so much of the popular forms of Christian rap are more geared towards, turning up. Like even Lecrae had the old song "I'm Turned," and it was, if you're a Christian hip hop fan who likes more low key stuff, it seems like it's doubly hard to find to find the Lupe Fiascos in the Christian space, like to find the jazzy rappers, like the rappers with the more relaxed flow. Like so much of it is like aggressive and like trying to take you and shake you and say, I love Jesus. But
hasn't that always been hip hop though?
No, it's not always been hip hop. I would argue vehemently that is not always. That's been a section of hip hop.
Well, no, I mean when I say hasn't always been hip hop, I mean the business of it. Like they're gonna go with, you are always gonna get the thing that is the most popular that's gonna get promoted, and so we can go all the way back to like the 90s when it was like gangster rap, right? And so you were seeing like the DMXs and all the way up until you get into like the 50 Cent, right? Who were, only talking about murder and I'll do this and that. Or you had the people that was talking about selling drugs and all this crazy lifestyle. It was a big turn from the 80s. The 80s talked about like what was going on in the community and how we need to fight the power and how we need to stick together as black people and all this other stuff, like take pride in who you are. And then fast forward up until now, it's all about the turn. So that's the thing that's going to get promoted. And I'm not necessarily mad at Christian or any artists that make that make music if they're trying to reach a certain generation. You know what I'm saying? And so I know like certain artists, they make music because they want the younger generation to hear it. So it sounds really urban, really fresh. But when you listen to the message, you're like, oh, okay, I can get with it.
No, that's a good point. I mean, that's true. I mean, I guess in the world, it's the same as in the Christian space. You're going to go with what's popular. But I just think like in the world, even when like gangster rap was popping, you could still find you could easily say, well, you got 50% that's gangster, then you got 50% that's conscious. And I could easily just go buy the Nas record as easily as I can go buy Trick Daddy. Trick Daddy may come in at number 1 on 106 in Park, but it's not like it's hard to find Nas if you're looking for it. But in the Christian space, I feel like it's 90% we trying to turn up for Jesus. And it's like, I'll say this, what I'm looking for in a Christian space, I'm looking for like the equivalent of like a Common or like a Lupe or like a De La Soul, like the Christian rappers who are just, and they're out there. I've found like some of them that are more like, yo, it's cool to be turned for Jesus, but it's also cool to like throw out the Jesus vibe. And just like had a cool Jesus wordplay, and then like had a beat that's like the chopped up soul sample. I'm a Kanye fan. I mean, not as big as I was, but I'm a fan of his music, or I should say, not really a fan of him, but like a fan of his music, and just like the chopping up of the soul samples and the jazzy beats and like the Wu-Tang beats and stuff like that. I'm like, where? And so I just think there's a bigger disparity in the Christian space between styles than in the worldly space. But you are right. Like one style will typically be more popular than the other. So, you're right about that.
Yeah, I mean, you're right to a certain degree. I think that it's a lot of Christian artists that are out that they do that. Like they have really, just a different style than the popular artists, right? And I think, yeah, Lecrae and all them dudes, because they're the more popular ones, they sell the most. You're gonna get those things, but there's a lot of artists, and I'm gonna put you up on this probably tomorrow when I see you. There's a lot of artists that you're gonna be like, oh, and they've been around for a long time. They're either really independent, so they don't market themselves, but they're on Spotify, they're on, Apple. You can find their music, and they're doing their thing. And then you also think about the differences between, is this someone's ministry, or is this just something somebody's doing to feed their family? And so I think when you look, whatever they're trying to do, when you look at it, you got to be like, are they doing it as a ministry, or are they doing it just because they're just trying to do music? There are certain artists that have been around for a long time that do that. It's an artist named Seven. You probably wouldn't like his music. He's like a super street dude. Like he comes from that background, like really tough and heavy, face tattoos, all that. But sold out Jesus freak, like for real. You listen to his music, you like, oh, he for real. It's ministry for him. He just uses this as a tool to share the gospel. He ain't out there trying to promote himself. He ain't out there trying to even make money. He does shows like in the hood for free, and he gives away music like all the time. And so I think you have to like look at the individual and I guess let them speak for what are they trying to do with this music. Are they trying to be the greatest of all time Christian rapper, or is this a ministry for them? And then what are they battling with? I think we could probably get into this quote that everybody knows by an artist named Lecrae. I am not a Christian rapper. I am a Christian who raps. And how that quote, like during that time when he said it, it like changed almost. Well, I think it pretty much did. It changed like Christian hip hop. Because ultimately what he was saying was, don't put me in a box with all the other Christians, because up until that point, you had, Cross Movement, 116, and the stuff that they was doing, which he was a part of. Everything was theological rap, promoted to the urban community, but like the suburban kids, right, and the suburban families were the ones that was come to our church and do a concert, and we'll pay you. And that's how the buzz was blowing up. And so when you hear that quote, right, as a I don't know how long you've been following Christian hip hop, or like how deep you really got into it, how many different artists you listen to. But when you think about a Christian and then an artist, any type of artist, when you hear a quote like that, I am not a Christian rapper, I am a Christian who raps. And he said it like this in some of the interviews: I am just a Christian who so happens to rap. What do you think of? And how would you break that down when you hear it?
I think of an artist who's trying to free himself of any confines, or like you just said a second ago, who's not trying to be put into a box. I'll say this is something I just thought of. We mentioned the song "Summertime," and Will Smith. It's a very nostalgic song. It's a very inoffensive song. I mean, Will Smith was one of the few rappers that, I mean, I guess if you were Christian, you know, your parents didn't really have trouble letting you listen to.
Yeah, you probably could listen to some Will Smith joints, and grandma'd be
Yeah.
happy.
I remember blasting Men in Black, you know, in the car, you know, and then, you know, just like thinking that was the greatest thing ever. But it is. It's still a great song. I'll stand by that. Men in Black.
Hey, Man in Black movie come on right now. That ending scene with the dance where they play his video. Yo, I'm in the room with my kids and we jamming out to it.
I love that music. See, we getting off track because like if Men in Black came on right now, I would close down the computer and Darry would be speaking to a blank screen. But thankfully, no. But like to my point, like Summertime, I think what Lecrae is saying that is if he put out a song like Summertime, which is just a beautiful song about nostalgia, about growing up, about like, you know, just your first love and about the vibes of summer. Lecrae probably would have got some hate. Probably. Let me take that back. He would have gotten hate because I would look in his mentions. I would look in his Twitter feeds, and this is like, yo, Lecrae, this is a great song. You have some really great wordplay. Why didn't you mention Jesus? You should have mentioned Jesus more, man. And like the whole song could be about Jesus. You know, it's like, I mean, it seems like Christians ain't really up on metaphor. They ain't really up on, you know, I mean, they really must not be up on their Old Testament because the Old Testament could explicitly have passages about Jesus without mentioning Jesus. But it's how God would basically. I've heard this, like the New Testament is Christ revealed, the Old Testament is Christ concealed. And Lecrae would have a lot of music where it's like Jesus is there, how he walks, how he loves his wife, how he relates to racism, how he relates to society, how he deals with money, how he deals with groupies, how he deals with friends, how he deals with just having fun and relaxing and just vibing. And it's all pointing back to his faith and how he deals with Jesus. But in the mentions, it would be like, you ain't say Jesus enough. You ain't say Jesus enough. And I'm like, does the plumber who worships Jesus, when you let him up in your crib to fix your pipes, does he come in? And if you a Christian, does he come in and say, by the way, I'm about to unclog this toilet for the glory of God? If you don't get up under my seat and unclog my toilet so we can all take a crap. No, but it's like we wouldn't be wanting to hear that. It's like, you know, it's like, and then a plumber would probably end up saying like, look, I am a Christian, but I'm not a Christian plumber. I'm a Christian who just happens to be a plumber. It kind of I put it like this. This is my last point about this. You think about Afrocentrism, and this is a big debate amongst like, I wouldn't just say Christians who are of African descent or Black Christians, but just in the Christian church, how you are supposed to identify with something, right? You especially heard this since 2020. Like you should not. Some Christians are very like pro-Black. Like, yo, like my ethnicity is from God. It's my identity. And other Christians are like, yo, no race at any time. There is no such thing as race. And you really need to stop talking about that. And I think they both.
I can't stand those people. I'm gonna just be honest.
Now to me, I think they're both in error. I think they're both in error because I think nothing should be espoused higher than your identity in Christ.
Right.
And just as a point of common sense, because that's the one thing you can take with you when you leave this world.
Don't spoil it, because you know we got an episode where we're gonna be talking about that. So
true. So that's honestly this. I feel like this could be 3-parters, but I'll hold that back. But I'll just say I think Lecrae is like, y'all want me to say I'm a Christian rapper. It's almost as if he's saying like, I'm a Christian who raps. Like I'm a Christian and this is just like the tool I use. This like my being a rapper, I did not get saved and baptized. And when I came about the water, it says you are the rapping Christian.
Yeah.
You know, you are Lecrae, who I've given you these gifts and talents to. Now use it to bring me glory. You know, so I mean, and that could be if he's a rapper, if he's a teacher, if he's a plumber, if he's whatever. it could be interchangeable. I mean, Lecrae may not always be a rapper. If Lecrae becomes an author, is he going to have to say I'm a Christian author? Or I'm a I would rather you. I just like that because I think it kind of frees you up to just write about anything.
Yeah,
you know.
I think. Well, I agree, and I also hate the fact that Christianity, we only do that a lot of times with music and movies, right? But when you ask them, or even if you check their YouTube history or their Netflix history of what movies they watch, everything you watching ain't Christian, right? Every movie, every TV show. Some people are Christians. They watch The Bachelor, right? They watching Survivor. Those ain't Christian TV shows. But they're not in sin because they're watching. There might be some believers on there. It actually was a believer on Survivor. They were doing some thing and she had to bow down and do something with some statue, and she was like, "No, I can't do it." But
I like
we the only people. Well, we not me, like me and you, but Christians are the only people, and we make music this thing that we have to say, like, you have to be a Christian artist. You have to put the Christian in front of your name. And so, man, I appreciate Lecrae for saying, man, like, don't put me in a box. Like, I just want to be a individual who loves Jesus that raps. And when you listen to his raps, it reflects his Jesus. Like, he talks about his struggles. He talks about the things that he's dealing with. Like, he gives you his life in real time. The issues that he had with the church, how he was struggling, how he almost walked away from the faith. He had a song on a new album called Deconstructing. And then Journey. And these are songs that when you listen to them, you're like, oh, you can hear what he means. And then when you watch his interviews, which I think a lot of people don't watch his interviews because he clearly explains himself in his interviews when they ask him these questions. And he talks about why he doesn't want to get put in the box and all these other things. And so I agree with him from that standpoint. Like, because when you say you're a Christian, everybody just wants to hear a sermon, or they want to see, what's the TV show that's out right now, the popular one? The one that everybody's talking about. It's Chosen. No, The Chosen.
Oh, okay.
You either talking, you preaching a sermon, or if you're making a movie or a TV show, it needs to be The Chosen, right? And nothing wrong with those things. Those things are good. I think The Chosen, for it to be 100% from donations and they have to raise that money, they're putting out excellent content. But we can't say that for everybody else. And so, and it's like, you want me to put Christian in front of this movie? And this movie is like, not, the acting is bad. The writing is bad. Like, this is not anything that anybody wants to watch. And we don't do that with our doctors. We don't do that with our mechanics. We don't do that with our school teachers, right? We don't be like, I'm a Christian English teacher. I only teach Hebrew and Greek because I'm a Christian. So I think, it's okay to identify who you're representing or what you are, but that doesn't necessarily have to be like a whole subgenre of the actual genre. And I think that's what it has become. I'm okay with that with gospel music, because I think gospel is its own genre in itself. Like, it's different than anything else. Like, it's gospel music. It's exclusively about the worship or the singing of God, right? It's gospel music. So I'm okay with the gospel music. But with hip hop, bro, hip hop is rapping, saying metaphors, and rhyming a pattern, rhyming words over a beat. That's what hip hop is. And whether I'm talking about Jesus or Buddha, Muhammad, they didn't make Lupe Fiasco put Muslim in front of his name. He was Muslim when he came out. He's still Muslim, I believe, to this day. They're not like Muslim rapper Lupe Fiasco, and it's like, nah. Or Muslim artist or whatever it is. So yeah, I think we think that we get more like brownie points when we add Christian in front of it. Like, this is a Christian podcast. You know what I'm saying? It's like It's just a podcast. We talk about Jesus on here. We talk about some other stuff too, but the way we conduct ourselves and how we articulate ourselves. We're Christians. We ain't gonna be on here cursing. We ain't gonna be on here degrading women or talking about over explicitly things. No, we keep it holy. You know what I'm saying? Because we're Christians. But this is just a podcast. You listen to it, and that's it.
That's good.
And so, you had some scriptures. I want to dive into what the word says about these things. Mainly about, number one for me is how we should be doing things as Christian artists or Christian people, period. And so are we doing things in excellence? And then the things that we do, how does it bring God glory? And so, Raymond, if you want to kick it off with some of your verses as
I got you.
Catch my breath and try to find some water to sip on, which I can't.
That was something really interesting you said, though, and I just want to hop on. I just want to comment on something you just said about like Lupe and like the whole Muslim thing, because to me, and I feel like this is something the Holy Spirit just kind of prompted me to. To be a Christian is not a category. That's to be a Christian is to be an entirely new creation. Mm-hmm. It's almost as if you can say, instead of I'm a human being, you can say I'm a Christian. I'm an entirely new creature. And so it almost sometimes seems a little bit, reductive, or it seems a little bit confining to be like, because no one says I'm a human rapper. So, and, I mean, for real, like, so no one says I'm a human to me. So that's why ultimately, I guess, like, that's why I wouldn't have a problem with what Lecrae says. Cause I wouldn't say like saying I'm a human rapper would be just as funny to me as saying I'm a Christian rapper, or cause I think it's evident you're a human by the way you carry yourself. You walk upright, you don't sleep outside, you convert oxygen into carbon dioxide. You have all the trademarks of a human. And I think it's the same way with being a Christian. You have all the earmarks of a Christian. If you got to be saying it, it's that old adage. If you got to say it, oh, by the way, I'm a Christian. If you got to keep like being a mouthpiece for it, you may not be one. Or if you saying it and ain't backing it up with any actions, So that's just something that I just thought of. But I got a couple of scriptures, but I promise you this because me and Darry were talking about there being like two parts of it, but I think we can make this a 3-part episode. But I'll touch on one, and this is let's do Colossians 3 verses 23 through 25, and just talking about like how a lot of Christian rappers, sometimes I feel like in hip hop, they don't want to be known for being the greatest. And I understand that because we know who the greatest is. We're serving the greatest.
Yeah.
And they're like, you know what, yo, I don't care if y'all like my wordplay. I don't care if y'all like my turn of phrase, as long as y'all know about Jesus. And that's where I got a problem with it, though. So check this out. Colossians 3 verses 23 through 25 says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters. Mm-hmm. Since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord you're serving. So, I mean, we often use that scripture when we talk about your daily 9 to 5, working at the office, working for your boss. But and then we always say, that's why you should be excellent. You should show up early. You should show up early. You should stay late. You should be kind to your coworkers. You should work that much harder. You shouldn't skim off the top. You should be an excellent coworker. And I'm like, bet, not because we're trying to kiss butt, but because we recognize who our real boss is. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, I would broach the same thing with hip hop. I'm like, where's the work ethic? Where's the where are the artists who are like, that's the one thing about a lot of producers. I think about Kanye specifically because he was like, yo, For 5 summers in a row, I made 5 beats a day for 5 summers, and I have yet to hear the hip hop equivalent of that, where you just have somebody like put in the work like that. And I'm just like, man, like I look at a scripture like that and I'm like, where's a Christian who was like, man, I'm so driven to be all that I can be in this art form and to be excellent that, I'm constantly innovating, constantly pushing myself, constantly trying to top myself and best myself. And I think it's okay for Christian rappers to want to be the best, as long as they know they're serving Jesus.
Yeah.
And not and then that, and so yeah, so that's my thing.
I think about that from a basketball context, right? So like I used to play basketball, and I ran track in high school, and then I think about like the NBA as of right now, and I think about like who's a Christian there, right? And so I don't think there's anything wrong with being competitive as a